Unleash the power of purpose with impactful business voices, hosted by Nancy Backey and Anita Larson. Each week, you'll be inspired by stories from companies that are making a real difference in the world, and you'll learn practical tips on how to grow your business with an impact.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to another week of Impactful Business Voices podcast. If it's the first time you're joining us, we have an amazing guest today, like we do every week. We speak with different business owners and we learn how their business makes an impact in the world. And we try to get great tips for you from how you can do the same. And we want to find out what drives them, how do they get to where they are, and what does their business do? So we are your hosts. I'm Anita Larson.
And I'm Nancy Backey. Nice to see you guys again this week. So this week we have Bruce Lumley. He's a Thoughtsmith and a consulting hypnotist. Now, you may not know what a Thoughtsmith is, but just wait, you'll get to hear it a little bit from him. Now, through the use of hypnosis and NLP, what Bruce does is he helps people improve their lives. It's actually really incredible, overcoming fears and changing habits. We're really, really excited to learn more about how he works, how he changes people's lives. But most important, we're very eager to share. We want him to share the tips with you and really see how he's actually really making a huge impact in the world today. Bruce, welcome.
Hi, Nancy.
Welcome.
Hi, Anita. Thank you for having me. It's good to be here.
Thank you, Bruce. Thank you for coming. So, Bruce, we're really excited to bring you here on our podcast today. And, you know, I've been working with you for a little while, and I've really seen you go from newspaper and radio since 2002 when you started. Mm-hmm. And today I'm looking at you with over 11,000 sessions. Now you're online, you're using funnels, you have a CRM, you have a VA. Like, I know right in the beginning when we first worked together, you couldn't even imagine, getting to the online section. You know, I just want to start just because I told the viewers before you came online. Can you explain what a Thoughtsmith is? What does it really mean, so our guests can kind of understand what your title means?
Okay, so over the years, when I started out as a hypnotist, a lot of the techniques and scripts I used, when you first start off, you have to use a guide and a framework. But over the years, the more clients that I saw, the more I found myself creating things that didn't exist in my training. For example, I had a little boy come to see me once for wetting the bed. And of all the hypnotic inductions that I had, not one would work for him. And so I was kind of down to the wire. I didn't have a technique. I didn't know what to do. So I came up with something. And it was a hypnotic induction that I still use with kids to this day. So as the time went on, I ended up creating more and more different techniques and variations on existing techniques. So it occurred to me one day that I spend more time creating things now than I do working from my original training. So the word Thoughtsmith popped into my head one day, because after all, that's what I'm selling a lot is the thoughts.
I love it.
I love that concept. And, I'm new to what you do, Bruce. So I'm very excited about this episode and learning more about it. And actually, Nancy, what Bruce just said reminds me of our very first episode on Valentine's Day, what Michelle Hoffman said. And I don't know if you caught that episode, Bruce, but she's a relationship expert. And she said she had a client and she learned to sort of rewrite their story in their head, which sounds like similar to what you do, where one episode from the client's past in her mind was a punishment and a trauma, but rewriting that and have her see it in a new light as not as a punishment, but it was meant as protection. So she could rewrite the story in her head. It sounds a little similar to that. Is that right? Or
yeah, another way to put that is reframing.
Yes.
So, I mean, if you ever went through a really rough time in your life and you thought, oh my God, I'll be so glad when this is over, this is terrible. And then you look back a few years later and you think, you know what, that was a really rough time, but I wouldn't trade that for anything.
Right.
So the frame that it was in when you went through it, and now you realize, you know what, in a way that might have been a gift, or I learned something from that I could really use. So yeah. And there are different ways. I mean, if I'm working with somebody to quit smoking, they usually come in with this idea that if they give that up, they're losing something. But if we can reframe the idea of smoking so that it feels like an enemy, then it's easy to walk away from an enemy and leave that behind, right? So yeah, reframing techniques used for a lot of things.
And gaining something else too, right? They may be right in their mind, but they're also gaining happiness, health, etc.
Yeah. So how did you get started with this? Like, what's your story getting into this?
Okay. Well, for 20 years, I was an electronics technician. I fixed everything from aircraft radar to bank machines.
Very different from what you do now.
Yeah. Until life hit me upside of the head. No, there was a time in my 20s when every single pilot stick from every single fighter plane in this country, in Canada, went across my desk. So I was king of the world then. It was great. But when I was 35, I had a surgery that it didn't go well, and it left me in chronic pain. It left me with a pain syndrome. So for 3 years, I went from doctor to doctor to doctor, and they all said, "Oh, we acknowledge, yep, there's a problem, but we don't know what to do with it." I actually was referred to a psychiatrist at one point to determine why I didn't want to get well. So it was an absolute nightmare that I went through. And so one night I was in so much pain that I was keeping my wife awake, and I went down to the living room and just turned on the TV and started scrolling through until I found an infomercial. And the infomercial, it was they were selling an alternative medicine encyclopedia. And it's funny because that encyclopedia is still on Amazon. It's by Burton Goldberg. Now, this was pre-internet, back when the dinosaurs roamed. So I had to manually go through that book. I found a doctor and called him. And he was an MD, but he branched into all kinds of different therapies. He was an amazing guy. He had both sides of it, the alternative side and the mainstream side. Anyway, it took a couple of years, but we solved the physical problem, but I was left with the pain still. So I remember going to a chronic pain group meeting one night, and there were about 50 people in the room. These people had different pain syndromes. They were on medication. Some of them were in wheelchairs. And so I told them my story, and they told me that, okay, yeah, we know a lot of us have that kind of thing. As soon as you're stressed, it starts the pain cycle. And that's what they said. You'll never get out of that. So I wasn't a hypnotist at the time, but I knew that in life, if you accept someone else's reality or someone else's version, and that includes if a doctor tells you there's no cure for you, if you accept that, that's your lot, and that's how it's going to be. So I wasn't too good at that. So I kept looking. And one day I just stumbled across, we're at the dawn of the internet, right around 1999, 2000. That was when I had an old 56K modem. It was state-of-the-art stuff. And I came across a hypnotist in Colorado who specialized in treating pain syndromes. So I thought, what have I got to lose, right? So I flew down there for 4 days, and it was the most profound experience of my life. I remember at one point, I was actually floating above my body, looking down into the muscles in my back that were all in spasm and twisted up. And I thought, that just blew my mind. So I saw her 4 days, once in the morning, once at night. It was really intense. It was really hard work for me. But I knew by the end of the 4 days, I had enough, because I was able to affect the pain. I was able to interrupt not for long, but I had some power over it. And so I thought, well, I'll go home and find a hypnotist to work with and keep going with my own techniques, my own self-hypnosis. And long story short, it took me a year, but I learned to completely interrupt the pain cycle, and I was completely free of it. So with 2 little kids and a big mortgage, I decided to quit my old career at the age of 41 and became a clinical hypnotist. So
Good move.
everyone thought I was crazy, but within 2 years, I had clients booked 2-3 weeks in advance. I had my own radio talk show. Mind you, it was only a little town, but I had my talk show, and it was it was fast. It was but it was good. I learned so much, and I learned so much from people. I learned techniques. One of the first upgrades I took was for pain management, and I worked with a few people, not a lot of clients, but a few people over the years with pain syndromes. But yeah, see, when you become a clinical hypnotist, I'm certified with the National Guild of Hypnotists in New Hampshire. But when you start off, you kind of take your basic training. And I've never met two hypnotists the same, because everybody has, there's certain areas where they like to work. So you kind of build it block by block. So I built my own specialty. I'm kind of, in a way, I'm a refiner. So with the quitting smoking weight loss, which I probably 2/3 of my clients were for that, maybe more some years. But every time I could add a point or change the script or change the suggestion or emphasize something, I would just kept adjusting it. And as I did that, my success rate slowly crept up.
I have a question on that, if I may, Bruce. And I love the fact that that you brought out two of your most typical clients, like 2/3 of your clients, the smoking and the losing weight. For our viewers and our listeners, excuse me, is that where you're having the most success with? Like, how many sessions do these people need to come in? I mean, is it months of work? Is it a few weeks? Is it like, I know it must be different with different people. Can you just elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, for smoking, it depends on the client. Some people will come in and they say they're ready to go. And I've had clients quit from 2 packs a day to 0 in one session, but that's not the norm, right? A lot of times people come in, and this is when I use my 3-session program. So what they're doing is they're cutting down the first time, the second time, and then the third time I see them, they're cutting to 0. So most people can take that rate of change, right? Most people aren't the all or nothing kind of thing. Mm-hmm. With the weight loss, that's a little different approach. I mean, smoking, the eventual goal is 0, but weight loss, it's not like that. In the beginning, in my training, we used a deprivation approach, like a lot of those diets out there. Basically you starve yourself down to the number of pounds you want to be. But by the second year, I completely threw that out and made my own weight loss plan. So what I always say to people is that most weight loss diets approaches, the goal is the number of pounds, but the number of pounds is not the primary goal. The number of pounds is the problem. It's a symptom of the problem. So the primary goal when I'm working with a weight loss client is to create a healthy set of habits. Okay, so now that there aren't any all or nothings. If I'm working with a client, there's no food I'm going to tell them they can't eat. Because as soon as I say that, there's a part of them looking at me from behind their eyes saying, oh yeah.
Wait a minute. More time.
I'm going to get that as soon as I'm done this call.
But if you increase the good foods, proteins, vegetables, fruits, and water, and you decrease the bad foods to the point where the client's losing a pound a week, then that's the primary objective. Okay. The secondary issue is the number of pounds. That takes care of itself. And that's why most diets fail, because people chase that number of pounds, and there's all kinds of programs and all kinds of things that'll get you there. But if you haven't fixed the root of the problem, which is your habits, your daily habits, then you're only going to end up back where you started. So like I always say to people, if you're normally drinking 2 bottles of Coke per day, how about go to 1? If you normally had 2 glasses of wine with dinner, maybe go to 1. If you normally have 2 donuts with breakfast. You know what I mean? It's just, the idea is just the shift in the right direction. And, you know, the shift is different for everybody. I mean, if you're in your 20s and you want to lose 30 pounds and you're physically active, you don't have to, you're going to be eating a different diet than a 60-year-old who sits at a desk all day, right?
Right.
But my sessions are customized for the client. And so if they get that shift to the point where they're losing a pound a week, I tell them, well, you don't need to see me anymore. And that typically I see people from 1 to 5 sessions, and that's it, right?
But can I ask a follow-up question to that, to what you
Sure.
mentioned earlier too? Like, you know, then they go back to their bad habits. Do you see them fall back to the bad habits when they stop seeing you and they're on their own?
Well, any post-hypnotic suggestion, it'll stick if you don't bombard it out of existence. Okay, so if just to use it, I don't do this, but a real simple example to understand is there are ways to work with a client to make sugar taste like salt, so it's unappealing. Okay, so the first time they try and eat something with sugar, it tastes like salt, they don't want it. But if they keep trying, if they keep bombarding it out of existence, eventually, it won't last. You know, it's the same as smoking. You know, one of the things I usually do at the end of a quitting smoking session is the suggestion that even the thought of smoking a cigarette will create feelings of nausea. But if they want to keep trying it, they will eventually be able to bombard it out of existence. But hopefully they don't, right? But just
no, go ahead, please.
Just another point to the weight loss thing. You know, a lot of people, they have this all or nothing idea with that, and they think, okay, I'll go and revive my gym membership, and I'll ask them, well, do you like going to the gym? No, I hate it, but I'll do it. And I always say, well, don't do it then, because gyms don't work for 90% of people.
But that's how it's portrayed, you know, in the media. Go to the gym, don't eat anything, and you'll lose weight.
Yeah, but if it's agony, how long are you going to do it, right? So
Exactly. Yeah.
what I say to people is figure out, we're not trying to make you an Olympic athlete here, but figure out what you like to do. And for most people, the gym doesn't work because there's prep time, there's travel time, there's get changed, do the workout time, there's go home time, and you've spent 3 hours now, right? Most people don't have that. But if you can find something to do that you enjoy doing, then you're going to keep doing it, because in life, you can't be something you're not. So a little bit more physical activity, a little shift toward a healthier diet and away from the bad diet. Once you get that pound a week, you're on your way. And a little story I always use is, let's say that you're at work and Frank's retiring. Well, Frank only retires once. So you walk into the lunchroom and somebody says, hey, Frank's retiring. Here's some cake and ice cream. Well, of course you can. You don't want to be that person standing in the corner saying, oh, no, I can't have that. It's not on my diet. You know, where's the fun in that, right? Of course you can. Because it doesn't matter what you did in the moment or even the week. It matters what you did over the month. If you ate well over the month and you got some exercise over that month and you drop 4 pounds, then you win. Which is an idea most people have never thought of it that way. It's either all or nothing.
Right.
Bruce, something that stands out when I see not just your website, but when I see what you do, and this is in the last few weeks, I saw some testimonials come from people who were smoking like 40 years, and they came to you for, you know, call it that 1 to 5 second sessions, because I know everybody's different, and until today, they still have not thought of a cigarette. Does that occur with, can I call it, 95% of smokers, and also the same with losing weight and anything else that you do when, they're trying to change a habit?
Well, with the smokers, what I found is that after a year, if I phone to the people back who've been through the 3 sessions, 80% have not gone back to it.
80%.
Okay.
So that's a pretty high success rate.
It is.
Yeah.
With the weight loss clients, I'll see them 2-3 times. And if they're losing a pound a week, I'll tell them, you know what, call me if you need me. And I've had people call me back 6 months later, 2 years later, or not at all. Because if you're losing that pound a week, if there are crash diets that'll get you there, but you haven't created a new set of habits. You know,
Right.
if it takes someone 6 months to get there, those new habits are pretty much entrenched. This
Mm.
is just kind of who they are, right? So by going slower with the weight loss, it actually works better over the long term.
Mhm.
So besides weight loss and quit smoking, what other types of clients do you see? What's some of your other client success stories that you could share?
I see a lot of confidence and self-esteem, public speaking kind of things, you know,
Mhm.
self-doubt, things like that. Um, fears and phobias are a big thing. Um, you know, again, that ties into public speaking and you know, the two kind of overlap. Fears and phobias are a big thing. You know, fear of spiders, fear of snakes, fear of flying, fear of driving. You know, fear of dogs. Um, most people have a sense of where rational fear ends and irrational begins, right?
Mm.
You know, um, and with phobias, you know, they're actually the mind's own protection mechanism. It's just gone awry. You know, I had a woman once come to see me who she'd always been afraid of snakes, and her brother had bought a house out in the country. So he asked her to come for the weekend. And so she was a little uncomfortable because there's snakes in the country. And but she said, I was doing okay until he asked me to put a bag of garbage out in the garage. And she said, I opened the door and I saw the garbage can where I was going to drop the bag. And she said, I saw a little snake on the floor. And she said, I don't know what happened, but I came to inside the house, rolled up in a ball on the floor with a great big goose egg on my forehead.
Oh, wow.
So she said, I don't know if I ran into the edge of the door or the door frame, but she said, I knocked myself out. Okay, so she saw her phobia as like, this is an awful thing.
Mm.
And I said, but you know what? For some reason, there's a part of your subconscious mind that's really, really frightened, and it's not working against you, it's working for you.
Mm.
So these phobias are not enemies, they're actually designed to help you. So there's a technique I use often. It's called Parks therapy. Now it's not split personality. It's based on the idea that when things happen in your mind, there are lots of automatic responses. So when this happens, then that. So with her, when she saw a snake, that part of her mind would actually take over to protect her. So that part of her mind formed a long, long time ago. And it doesn't even matter when it formed. I mean, I didn't even bother going back to find it. But with parts therapy, what you can do is actually take someone into hypnosis and they actually talk to the part. They actually communicate with the part and basically say, you know what, you've done a good job up to now, but I don't need you anymore. You know, they're different techniques. And so what they're doing, the key here is they're taking their present day conscious understanding of the situation back in time to when the part formed in their mind. And so they can make peace with it and the part's quieter. They can bring it back down to what's reasonable.
Mm.
So, but confidence, self-esteem issues, yep, fears and phobias. And then after that, there probably been 100 different reasons I've seen clients for, you know, all kinds of things.
It's amazing.
One interesting sideline I never expected was I had a woman once come in who there was a car kept parking out in front of her house, and she'd called the police, and she'd actually seen the car, but she'd never seen the license plate. So one day she got home from work and she hid in the bushes. And sure enough, here comes this car again, right? So she ran out of the bushes and she looked at the plate, but she looked at the driver. And then the plate was too far away. So she couldn't remember the numbers. So she came in to see me because one of the police had told her, why don't you see a hypnotist? And that's what I said to her. I said, you saw the plate, but you only consciously remembered the first couple of numbers. So, and then she looked at the driver. So it was in her subconscious, but she couldn't access it. So in a session with me, we were able to get, it was a six digit plate. She got the first 5, and she called me to tell me it was enough for the police to go on that.
Oh my God, I've got shivers, Bruce. Like, holy camoli. Wow. Sorry. That was amazing. Wow.
And that's based on the idea. It's because everything that you've ever seen or heard or felt or experienced in your life, everything is there. So even if you only caught a flash of something, the image is still there. So, yeah.
Well, if you think about that, then you should really have a hypnotist on staff in all, police interrogations or witness statements, and make sure you get everything they remember.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, because you can have 2 witnesses at the same scene and each one recalls it a little bit differently.
Exactly.
Yeah. Wow. But I mean, people have come to see me for, they've lost things. They lost their watch and they don't know where it is, but they think they know where it is, but they can't find it.
I think we all know people that could use a hypnotist for that.
Well, it's funny because I saw a lot of people over the years that hit early retirement, say early 50s, mid 50s. And they come in to see me and they say, it's a really strange request, but I had my career for all these years and I want to do something else, but I don't know what to do because I've always been this. And so somehow they ended up in my office because they knew that they knew, but their conscious mind was blocking it, So yeah, usually a session deep into them, they would get the idea of who they really were because they'd lost touch. They'd been doing a career for so long that they'd lost sight of.
I think that makes so much sense, Nancy. I'm sure you can relate to that too, just kind of with the work we do. I think we see that as well a lot of times with business owners and people that change careers and trying to figure out, okay, who am I now? It's very true.
Did you ever hear of a group called Abraham Hicks?
Definitely.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things that the points that Esther Hicks makes is that what makes you happy when you're 15 is different from what makes you happy at 25 and 35 and so the point of it is that your idea of what makes you happy in life is it's like moving across the sky, right? So as life brings you experiences and you learn what you like, what you don't like, your idea of happy moves, which is why somebody who starts a career at, say, 20 years old, now they are here at 45 still doing the same thing. They can't figure out why they're so unhappy because they're no longer going in the direction of what makes them happy. They're still living a life that they wanted 25 years ago. So the trick is if you can stay in touch with yourself and what makes you happy and what you want, then I mean, you'll never get there because it'll move by the time you get there. But at least if you're going in alignment in the direction that's aligned with who you really are and who you've become, then at least you have a chance, right?
We actually have a question from one of our listeners live, Bruce. Michael's asking, he's curious to know if you see hypnotist entertainers, as which I'm sure we've all seen them, as a benefit to your industry or as a scourge. How do you view the hypnotist entertainers?
Okay, well, I get this question a lot.
It's a good question.
Back in the early 60s, 90% of hypnotists were entertainers, and that was what people knew them as. But by the 90s, it was the other way around. So you've got 90% are clinical hypnotists like myself, and only 10% are the entertainers. Because I came into this from the clinical side, I used this to rid myself of a chronic pain syndrome. I've stayed on the clinical side, and we have a convention every year in New Hampshire, and the stage hypnotists and the clinical hypnotists we're separate entities, and I've only ever met one hypnotist who worked both sides of the fence. Okay, so the stage hypnotist, they can't figure out why clinical hypnotists, why we do what we do, because we have to reinvent the wheel every single time, every single client. It's a lot of work. Whereas a stage hypnotist will run the show and maybe tweak it a little bit each time. He runs the same show all the time, right? But I've taken the course twice to be a stage hypnotist and written my own show as well, but I've never done it because, like I said earlier, in life you can't be something you're not. I get the greatest enjoyment from helping a client overcome a barrier they've been working on for years, right? I mean, that's what makes me go. So I think you've got to realize that clinical hypnotists and stage hypnotists are pretty different people. And the one benefit was that when I originally started running radio ads many years ago, nobody knew what a clinical hypnotist was. So my ads, actually, I called it my chicken ad. The question was, did you ever hear someone cluck like a chicken? And so, did you know that in addition to stage hypnosis has many other valuable practical applications? So I was able to sort of define what I did because most people knew what the stage hypnotist was, right? But
so that actually answers one of my questions, because I always wonder if it's actually real what they are doing on stage. And you're saying it is. It's just a different form of hypnosis than what you do in a practice.
It's a different depth. Okay, so there are 6 established levels of depth. There's different scales, but that's the main one that we use now. So in the beginning of a stage show, the hypnotist is doing all kinds of little tests and asking questions, and it looks like they're just playing games, but they're trying to figure out which people can go the deepest. So that's down to level 5, level 6, right? So that's why the hypnotist will start out with a room of, say, 500 people, and they'll have 15 or 16 on the stage, and then they'll send a few of them back, and they'll keep a few for chair warmers, and they end up doing that show. A room of 500, they're doing a show with 2 or 3 people are the main actors in the show, right? Because not everybody can go to that depth level. So when someone is deep in hypnosis, level 5 or level 6, their conscious mind is so far away that you can create hallucinations. Okay, so let's say you were in my stage show, and I said to you, okay, Anita, when I snap my fingers, you're going to see a rabbit appear on the floor. So I snap my fingers and you see the rabbit. Okay, that's because your conscious mind isn't there to say, you can't make a rabbit appear like that. It doesn't work that way, right? But very few people go to that depth level. Okay, they can create positive hallucinations like the rabbit appears. A negative hallucination would be that a person disappears. Okay, so that's only for stage. Okay, with clinical, we don't need to do things like that with clients. So with a clinical hypnotist, clients typically are in level 1, level 2. Okay, and 95% of people can get to that level. Okay, but if you want someone in a stage show, you're down to about 10, only maybe 10, 20% can get to that level. So,
one thing that I really appreciate you saying, and we see it in many industries, not just hypnotism, but I'm so happy that you said it here, is you said you can't be what you're not.
Yes.
I love the fact that you are authentic, you're transparent, you just tell the truth. Like, you just say it the way it is, and it's not like, oh yeah, you're going to be great in 10 sessions, like you don't create a story. It is real. No, but it's true, because we see it, whether it's in our industry, in business coaching or hypnotism or almost any industry. We see that fakeness, and they're trying to be real, but you really bring it real, Bruce, to the table. I don't know if you had anything to add on that note, Anita.
No, I agree 100%. It's a very true statement, and we do see that. And I'm sorry, I feel like I have so many questions about this, again, because I don't know much about it. But can I ask one more, and then Nancy, I'll let you get a word in as well.
No, I'm enjoying this.
Hypnosis is one thing, and I think we all know of it, not necessarily know it in depth and how it works. I don't know much about NLP. Can you explain a little bit around NLP and what that is and how does that work?
Okay, so NLP is neuro-linguistic programming, and a lot of the hypnosis techniques and NLP techniques overlap. Okay, so just to use, again, a simple example of you want to quit smoking. If it feels different, then it's easy to make the change, right? If you quit smoking with willpower, and you haven't smoked in 3 months and you're still missing it every day because it still feels like an old friend, then you really haven't made the change you need. But there are different ways to use NLP. I mean, you can use NLP for sales, right? And a simple example, this was before NLP was even defined, but I remember reading a story about someone back in the 50s, and that was back in the days of salesmen and door-to-door calls. And one of the techniques that they found worked, and they didn't know why, was when you met a new prospect and you talk to that prospect and you're having a conversation, wait until the prospect smiles and then extend your hand to shake hands. He said, we don't know why, but your odds of closing a deal, it just works better. We don't know why that is. Well, that's because when the prospect was smiling, you made him laugh, you shake his hand, and what that does is it anchors the feelings in his subconscious. So he doesn't remember why, but he remembers he likes you, right? So, I mean, that was before they even figured out what NLP was. But yeah, if it's the same as in advertising, at one time, television ads were mostly factual. We build the best car because, right? But then they realized, well, wait a minute. If we can use feelings here, we can get a lot better results. So that's why Ford actually started this. And I remember seeing this in my training. They were talking about this Mustang commercial. And they figured out that the average buyer of a Mustang at that time was a 50-year-old man, right? So they thought, okay, so we're going to put a 40-year-old man in the seat because that's what he thinks he looks like.
Sounds like
and then they put a very attractive wife beside him or woman beside him. And so they were selling the feeling, right? So if you connect certain feelings to certain products, that's just the advertising application. But if people have a good feeling about your product, they'll go out of their way to buy it from you. So, but NLP, there's all kinds of different ways to use that. But basically, it's the same as hypnosis. If you change the way people feel about things, change the feelings connected to like fears and phobias, or food or cigarettes or whatever it is. If you change the feeling, then you can help the person get unstuck from what they're stuck with.
Yeah, and you know what, Anita, I did NLP, and I had a certain situation, and it was like, oh my God, it was really life-changing. I literally slept so well like a baby, like I never even knew what sleep was. But I took this one specific issue, and for me, it was focus on something. I can't even explain it to you. It was the most incredible thing that happened, because now I could literally pull out the focus hat out of my brain, or whatever word Bruce can bring, and just work on that. But you have to learn it. And if you do a few sessions on NLP, oh my God, when you learn something like that yourself, you could literally use it for the rest of your life. It's incredible. One thing that I didn't even ask you, Bruce, and it's so big for you, because you're now, you've been working with, people one-on-one. And even back in the day, you used to work with companies, but now you're really bringing the companies back. And I think that's really important because, even though through the pandemic, a lot of people are now, working from home, they're going back into work now. They're going back into the workforce. More in the US than in Canada, but they're going back out. So people are still getting used to taking the breaks, going for the smoke breaks, taking their, 30-minute breaks that the business is paying for. Would you mind just taking a few minutes and just explaining what is it that you're going to be doing for these businesses? Because I think it's a huge impact that you're doing for business owners, talking about the reducing their costs, even health-wise for these guys. Can you just take a few minutes and let the world know about that?
Well, when you think about the cost to business of smokers, you've got higher absenteeism. You've got the costs, the non-productive time of people standing outside smoking. There's so many there's so many negatives to having employees that smoke. It affects the bottom line. It affects productivity, especially if you've got a chain of people and now, this has to be done, and that passed over to this person, and then passed over to this person, and then the fourth one is out having cigarettes, so everything stops, right? Yeah, it's very costly, especially if you have employers that are paying the cost of the healthcare for the employees. So My smoking program is designed for groups. I mean, I've done it online. I've done it in person. I remember one of the first ones I ever did. It was in a Holiday Inn, and I had everybody bringing their mats to lie on and sleeping bags and a pillow. There's a big the ballroom in a Holiday Inn. I had 50 people lying on the floor. It was great, but yeah, the corporate program. I mean, it's a little different. Most of the time, it's in groups. It's not one-on-one. But the best success is if the employer pays part and the employees pay part, because if the employee pays part, it's kind of like they have an investment in it too, right? So yeah, each one plays a part. And I mean, even if an employer had only a 30% success rate from the group or 50% success rate, I mean, it's still, the payback happens year over year after that. So
I love that.
Yeah.
And thanks, Bruce, for bringing that up, because I think it's really important now that you're bringing it back, because before during the pandemic, everybody was at home. So you bringing this back with so it's really wonderful. Thank you. Look, there's a lot of viewers and listeners that still don't know what hypnosis is and if it's right for them. For anyone that wants to try it and looking for ways to make that positive change in their lives, I'm going to ask you, what is the number one tip that you can give them
for hypnosis?
For making change. So whether it's the hypnosis and NLP mix, but what is that tip that you can give them? And eventually, I will suggest that they get on a 15-minute call with you and see if it's a right fit for them, number one, but also if they're willing to make that change, right? Because they have to want it so bad. I mean, if you're smoking and you don't want to quit, well, don't get on a call with Bruce, because you're not going to quit, right? But yeah, what would be the number one tip that you can give somebody that's going to allow them to take that next step with you?
Well, for most people, they may have an idea that they want to change something, maybe get rid of a habit, or maybe change their career, or maybe open a new business. And they have this idea and they think about how great this would be. And then the buts happen. So they think, but that's going to be hard, and but that might be risky, and but everybody's going to think I'm nuts, and but the buts are made out of all kinds of things, but I've never done anything like that, or but my friends or my family say I'm not smart enough to do that. There's all kinds of reasons in there, but my point would be that those buts and the resistance you feel and the kind of sabotaging programs you feel, they're just made out of thought. Your mind is pliable. You can make changes if you want to, but people generally perceive the barriers to making these changes are far bigger than they are. But yeah, your mind is pliable, but it's important to understand why you want to do it. So if you say want to launch a new business venture, or you want to give up a habit that you've had for 30 years, it's important to get straight in your head the whys. Why do you want to do this? And one of the techniques is getting leverage, right? Like I've had people come in and they want to accomplish something or change something, and I say, okay, let's just look at it this way. Let's say that you don't make the change, okay? And let's kind of, I'll take them into hypnosis, and let's go ahead 5 years and pretend you never made this change, or you never did anything. And they don't like what they see. Let's say, well, let's go another 5 years. So now we're 10 years into the future, and let's say you never changed one thing. And so it helps them to get leverage on the situation, because if they go 20 years down the road, sometimes it terrifies them, right? And then if you go 20 years down the road, let's say you do make the change, right? And you change your trajectory. So now I have a contrast. They have a contrast in their mind of what happens if they change and what happens if they don't change. So then it's much easier to say, okay, I want to change. It's going to be maybe difficult, or I'm going to have to do this and accomplish that, and maybe make some tough choices. But if I make the change, then I can get where I want to go. But again, back to my original point, though, people perceive these things are harder than they are. So But yeah, I mean, I can do a 15-minute call with anybody. We can decide if it feels right to them. That's what I always tell people. If it feels right to you, then we can book a session if you want to think about it, and if they ask me, well, how far am I going to get in a session? I'll say, well, you could get 10% of what you want, or you could get 90%, or anywhere in between. I don't know. And even you won't know until a couple of days after the session, until you settle.
I could say it's never going to hurt. That 15 minutes is probably going to change your life. So if your mind is ready to go and make that change, Bruce, thank you so much for today. We really appreciate you joining us. Yeah. Anita, did you have any last minute questions for him?
No, I had my fill of questions. I learned so much from this session, so I greatly appreciate it. And you have Bruce's contact information been scrolling on the screen, so you can go to his website, thoughtsmith.ca. And you can also find a copy of this recording on our YouTube channel. Handles Impactful Business Voices. So thank you again, Bruce, for joining us.
And thank you very much for having me.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah.
You too.
Okay.
So Nancy, this was great. And I feel like we got so many takeaways from it. I love the all or nothing approach. Is something I really like. The thought of, it doesn't have to be all or nothing. Just take the step and make the positive changes. And also you can't be what you're not. Things that seem so obvious, but
that's what I love about Bruce. He's like straight up, he'll just tell you the truth. He's not going to, like I call it, play that violin, right?
Yeah. And I think what we kind of ended with here too is, all the buts in your head, it's just noise. You need to know your why. Why do you want to make that change? And kind of take away the noise of the buts. So yeah, it's great. So I wanted to say, make sure you keep in touch with Nancy and myself to learn what else we have going on. We love this podcast, and so far we got great feedback. We have a lot of other opportunities to learn more from us. I have a workshop coming up in a week or so. Nancy has a summit coming up in the next couple of months. So we always have something going on. So if you're interested in learning more, send us a note, either email us or connect with us on LinkedIn. And we're happy to always have a quick 15-minute virtual chat about anything. So feel free to reach out.
Yeah, so thanks, Anita. And we're going to do something a little bit different. So first, guys, don't miss out on our future episodes. We'd love you to support us. Click on the subscribe button. Again, we're on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook. Just write our name. You're going to find us. Next week's podcast, we're going to have Russ Johns as a guest. Now, Russ is a live stream podcast producer, and he teaches small business owners and individuals how to launch their shows and how to get the most out of their podcast.
He's our lifesaver.
Yes, he's been such a tremendous help to getting us set up. And what we'd like to do here is really introduce you to Russ. Russ, are you okay to come in for a quick second just to say hi?
He's always here.
Always willing to join you guys. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for Bruce talking about this subject, because it's a tremendous value to so many people that can get some relief from some of the things that they've experienced in the past. So, making change is what we're all about here. And this is what the podcast is about. So thank you.
Yeah, we're excited to talk to you next week. And I mean, you do so much. And I think the impact you have on small businesses and helping them move forward is amazing. So we want to be able to share more information about what you do and not just have you in the background where nobody knows that you're actually here. So we're looking forward to bringing you to the forefront next week.
Yeah, well, thank you for allowing me to pop in and say hello. Thank you.
Yeah, and we really appreciate you, honestly, Russ. And I know you're here. You hear it from us every week. Like, if it wasn't for you, this would not be a stress-free process. So thank you from the bottom of both of our hearts.
Yeah.
And guys, if your business is making an impact, please reach out to us so we can talk about featuring you on a future episode that we have. And until next week, go make an impact. Bye, everybody. Thank you for listening to Impactful Business Voices. Subscribe now and don't miss an episode.